all that matters in business.
Good afternoon, and you're very welcome along to You and Your Business with me, Don Harris. Each week I talk with people in business about what they do, and it's really my good fortune to be able to do so. And particularly today, it's going to be fascinating because, would you believe it, it's about visual time travel, and my little byline is through the ages. So, but it is, because I've got the visual time traveller here herself, would you believe? Your Business at Dublin City FM is the email if you'd like to drop me a note, and we'll talk about what you do on another day. But today, here in front of me, I'm delighted that Alison Hackett's here. Thank you very much for coming in.
Hello, Don.
Lovely to see you, and what a fantastic idea you had some time ago. But I want to introduce you properly, so I better give the listeners some idea of who you are and where you come from, as they used to say in one of those programmes. Alison Hackett is the author and curator of The Visual Time Traveller. It's a stunning exhibition that's coming up, a fascinating lecture and a beautifully illustrated book, which I have in front of me, with unusual binding, which is absolutely true. The book and the exhibition, which will be coming up, we'll tell you more about that in future programmes, includes more than 1,000 facts since the year 1500. And the facts are woven into 100 graphic plates specially created by design house Origin, who are based in Dublin. Indeed, they are a well-known company, and they have done such a fantastic job on this. Alison was born in Cork and educated at Trinity, taught maths and studied maths and economics, and then started working at the Institute of Physics some years ago, before coming up with this winner of an idea and producing a wonderful book, which I'm only sorry we don't have it in a visual form for you at home, because it's just an incredible piece of work. And it's been really some years in the making, never mind in the design. Even the design took a year and a half, but you've put many, many years into getting it this far, Alison.
Yes, it did grow out of the last thing I was doing with the Institute of Physics. When I was working for the Institute of Physics, I was very interested in outreach and switching people on to physics, if you like. And one of the last projects I did was to create a physics timeline that we presented in a poster. But the timeline didn't show just physics. We also showed things that were happening in the arts world, things that were happening in exploration, general history, even sports, and we put them in context. So when you looked at this poster, you could see what was happening in different areas at any one time.
So I'm just going to flick open the start of the book so listeners get an idea of the range of. So in just 5 years, I'm going to read out the first 5 years, but the 5 years in question are from 1500 to 1505. And we're not talking about 3 o'clock to 3:05. We're talking about the year 1500. So in 1500, in Rome, Nicolaus Copernicus observes a lunar eclipse. In 1504, Michelangelo creates the sculpture of David. In 1503, Michel de Nostradamus is born in France. I did say that twice because it's in brackets as well, in case you wondered. Portuguese navigator João da Nova discovers the island of St. Helena. This is getting harder to pronounce. We're up to we're down to 15, or we're back to 1500. Johannes Trithmius writes Stechanographia, hidden writing. I see what you mean. Yes, I'll get that now. A treatise on cryptography and Steganographically disguised as a book on magic. And in 1503, Spanish forces defeat the French in the Battle of Cerignola, considered to be the first battle won by gunpowder and small arms. And there's lots of fascinating facts like that throughout the whole book, on each page, and the design is just stunning. So right now I'm looking at what I best describe as a thermometer, except at the top it says 1710 to 1715. That'll show you the way the design changes. And Beijing is here, Constantinople, but they're halfway down and halfway up the thermometer, depending on which way you look at it. It's just like the sort you used to stick in your mouth. But it's incredible design and so ingenious. So one little fact from here. In 1710, the world's first copyright legislation is introduced, Britain's Statute of Anne. And that's in 1710. What is it here? Oh, I'll have to flick on to another page to get to 1716, maybe. I'll find 1716 here. 1725, back a page. 1720, back another page. Okay, 1716, America's first lighthouse, Boston Light, is built in 1716. So,
And actually in 1715, and the picture you're looking at, Handel's Water Music was commissioned by King George I.
yeah.
And it was actually
Don't
performed...
mention water, it's not good at the moment.
But it was performed on the Thames. The King,
So this is in the shape
King
of the
George I said, "I want you, Handel, to write this music, and we're going to have it performed on the Thames." And it was
Fantastic.
on
It's a different
barge.
part of the Thames, though, because I happen to know, because my wife watches EastEnders, there's a big bulge in the Thames. It doesn't have it here, so it's a different part of the Thames.
Indeed. And actually, this
Fantastic.
design idea was my idea, to use the EastEnders looking Thames for that.
Really is awesome.
But the fact that they did perform it on the Thames, I thought was wonderful. And they recreated that
So clever.
playing in
Hats
in
off
the
to Argent
2000s.
Design. They deserve great credit for this. So we'll go up to 1816. The stethoscope is invented by René Laennec. Another interesting one. And another beautiful design.
And the design you'll see there is because Napoleon was exiled on the island of St. Helena, which you
Yes,
introduced in
yes,
that first
yes,
page,
indeed he was.
had been discovered
Yep.
in 1815 after the Battle of Waterloo.
Now, I can't resist flicking forward to 1916 because of the year that's in it. So here we are. We've got up to 1916.
That's probably
in,
1915
oh,
there,
gosh.
and you might want to go over one
Now,
page.
Alison was able to see that from across the table. That I hadn't actually got the right. How did you know that? Anyway, you're
because
quite right.
yeah.
So 1916, another fantastic design here. And Margaret Sanger opens the first birth control clinic in the United States, leading to her arrest for distributing information on contraception. And, oh look, we're even in here. The Easter Rising in Ireland and the Battle of the Somme in France.
Yes.
I don't think the Battle of the Somme in France is going to get a look in this year over here, I'm afraid, but it certainly should. But again, a very, very well thought out page, isn't it?
Yes, and that page is designed around the fact that Dadaism was starting, that art movement, which was,
really?
they started actually being very playful with typography and writing poems even in different shapes and things. So it was
Awesome.
a real reaction to
Really?
the First World War, which had been on that previous page
Crikey.
that you had just opened when I
Now,
could see
there's no
across.
point to me looking for 2016 here, in here, is there?
It went up as far as 2013 because it was published in 2013.
Yes, 2013, exactly. So
when
it's a few years
the Higgs
out now.
boson was.
So we're just
was
waiting
found.
for issue number 2 then. You know, we'll have to hang around for a few years, but that's just
Indeed.
fantastic. What a great book. And there's a real weighty feel about it. Beautiful binding, although in this particular case there is no spine to the book, although there's a lot of spine in the book, if you know what I mean. There's a huge amount of content, but there's no actual formal spine on the corner,
And
which
that
makes
was
it very unusual
to
and very
allow
colourful.
the book sit open so that when you open it on your coffee table, it will stay open beautifully flat.
Yeah, lovely idea. And again, I'm sure the designers maybe suggested that, or maybe you did. And I notice here there's a particular type of what I would call old style binding. It's nicely, you know, you've got a cord in the middle
You
here
see the
holding it all
thread.
together, thread.
Yes.
And these are things that are very, very important to important books and particular works of art, which this is. It's called The Visual Time Traveller, and we're going to be talking about it with Alison Hackett, its author and creator, along with a couple of other people who we really should mention, because we mentioned Argent Design. Garrett Bennis was another person involved there, and Sarah Maloney all helped in getting this book out and onto people's tables and into our hands today. So we're looking forward to seeing more. Alison, tell me now, the whole concept of this is going to go global. This is not just an Irish thing. It's such a large piece of work. You've included facts and figures from all around the world. It's certainly a great gift. So tell me a little about your whole idea, because I know you're full-time on this now. You've set up, it's, if you like, an entrepreneurial project. You've got the exhibition. You're going to have cards, or you have some cards already. It's certainly available to purchase and to post and be mailed, and we were talking about, you know, how that would happen. And you can get it in some of the bookshops in town. Hodges Figgis, I know, is one of them. But otherwise, people can get in contact with you directly at alison.hackett@21cr.ie. Isn't that right?
That's right. That's
Perfecto.
right.
So, and you can find lots more about the book there as well. And the visualtimetraveller.ie is your website.
That's
Isn't
the
that
website, and there's a Facebook page as well called The Visual Time Traveller.
So let's get back, now that we've kind of positioned the book and the wonderful work that it is. let's go back in time now, because it's a visual time traveler book, and tell me how you came up with this concept and why, because it's now become an obsession. It's a real visionary project. So how did it all start?
I guess it has. As I say, it grew out of a poster that I created for the Institute of Physics, the last job I did with them, which was putting history in context. So it was a timeline of physics, but we weren't only interested in the physics, we were also interested in what else was going on. Because when you're working with physicists, they tend to only want to talk about physics.
Yep.
If you're working with artists, they tend to only want to talk about art.
Yep.
But I was very interested in getting cross-curricular with this, so that if this poster was up in school, then you would have the geography teacher might walk by and be curious. The history teacher might walk by.
You had a fantastic poster you showed me earlier on that you sent to all the schools.
Yes, we had created this poster which we sent to all schools in Ireland, north and south, primary and secondary, really with this concept of being cross-curricular in approach. And out of that, I actually left the Institute of Physics and decided to go with the concept of extending that poster into a book, so that we would then have one page which we could just stick to 5 years and then find 12 facts that happened across different subjects. So no one subject was going to take prominence.
It was a hell of a leap of faith by you, though, to have this vision in mind. And like many great projects, it's painful to get it somewhere, and it's just as painful to get it other places. So you're in that part of the project now where you have to expand the sort of knowledge about the visual time traveller book and get it into more people's hands on a global scale.
Indeed.
That's all.
This is true, because I really haven't met anybody yet who doesn't want to engage with the book, and they want to
have it.
To even have it,
term.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's Christmas presents sorted, really, or Mother's Day.
Any
present, because it's very playful. You know, on the one hand, it can be intellectual if you want it to be, because you might be terribly interested in the serious facts in there. But equally, it's playful, because I kept in light facts as well, which weren't going to be normally on the world stage, or interesting facts about women, for example. There was one woman who had 11 children, and her husband ended up minding the children while she went on painting, and that was back in the 1500s. Her name was Lavinia Fontana, and they developed their whole design around that. So there's an interesting design with the woman, carrying on painting, and then the man is minding the kids. They're hanging out of him and from every different part.
Well, again, every page I open up is so graphically interesting. But a little fact: for 1920, Coco Chanel designs what will become known as the little black dress.
Exactly.
And in also 1920, prohibition is enforced in the United States. And there's so many little facts that pop up here. Are fascinating. There's so many conversations around this if people had this book in front of them.
Indeed, and I know at a dinner party recently, somebody told me there was a huge argument about which was their favourite page.
Oh, really?
But I think on the design end, when we were planning these designs, what was interesting was you've got there on that one you have open in the 1920s. You've obviously got 1922 and Irish independence.
Yeah.
Now there would have been a huge sort of maybe pressure from myself and in the thinking that we should have designed that whole page around the Irish fact.
Yeah.
But I didn't want the book to end up being dominated by Ireland. I really only let Irish facts come in if they merited it on the world stage.
A clear example here is you have 1922, the Irish Free State is formed, and the very next item, and the very next same page, same line, 1922, the tomb of Tutankhamun is discovered in Egypt. So you can't get more international than that in a flash.
And then we ended up with that design because Herbert Bayer in 1925 had developed the designs for universal lettering. And this is a very seminal design in a way in the book, because that was the beginning of real design happening in typography and in letter writing.
Really? Yeah.
And all the fonts began to be developed.
Yeah.
And I think in this special type of lettering, everything could be designed out of a circle or a line.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a very design sort of concept. So I loved that this page ended up niched onto that part of design.
Clever. It's just lovely. And you've done a very clever thing in that you've put a summary in pictures towards the back of the book. If somebody wants to find a year, they don't just have to look up the year, they can actually look up the picture for the year. And it's all
exactly.
so easy to navigate it.
You know, for example, there's that beautiful dramatic one of the Indian headdress, and that's the 5-year time period is 1835 to 1840.
Right.
And in that time period, you can see from the little picture there at the back that you've got an Indian in headdress and a little tear coming out of his eye. And then you've got some guns going in towards the back of his headdress. There are guns.
Clever.
And so those two facts
now,
that happened between 1835 and 1840 were that the Indian nation were being forcibly relocated. The Cherokees were being forcefully relocated in the United States with the Indian Removal Act, and they walked to their death, many of them. They walked from the eastern part of the United States to Oklahoma, and many died, and it was known as the Trail of Tears. So that's why the little tear is on his eye.
Goodness,
And then the guns pointing in on his headdress were the fact that Samuel Colt patented the first revolving barrel shotgun firearm. So this was where the designers really engaged with the idea of making this a little bit cryptic, but also communicating. So you have visual clues as to what's going to be in the actual text. And some people prefer text, and they can actually go to the very back of the book where it's all in plain text if they don't like the visual. But I know many people are inspired by a visual part of a design as well, and that's the bit that kind of invites you in. And I wanted people to turn every page on this book and be kind of not know what to expect next, and go,
that
wow,
is very much the case. And
Exactly.
and just I've finally found 1835, the actual page in the middle of that was nearly the centre of the book, and the headdress now, the head of the Indian has little things in it. So in 1838, the paddle steamer SS Sirius maybe makes the transatlantic crossing from Cork in Ireland to New York in 18 days. The first holder of the Blue Ribbon Band.
Indeed.
That's fascinating. 1838.
It is, and the first penny black, I think, came out on that page. That could be the last fact on the bottom there.
Yes.
The first postage
1840,
stamp.
the penny black, the world's first postage stamp, is issued.
Yeah, and you can see from, because I this was an immersion project, I obviously learned an awful lot, but the visual became an aid memoir for me.
Yes.
So I could remember that postage fact because I've seen this page so many times. But it's very handy that as you flick through this book, you it's like a little way of learning history yourself, a shorthand form to learn history.
Well, now, I mean, it's all very well, but who researched all this? Did you do all this yourself, or did you have some people to help you come up with all these facts? I came up
with all of the facts.
It wasn't your friend Google, was it? No.
There was a lot.
Was
in
it?
fact,
Okay.
I used a huge amount of Wikipedia because it's an open source encyclopedia and very trustworthy for that reason. So that gave me starting points. But I was a little bit like a Hoover for the year and a half I was doing this. I was reading an awful lot. I would see something on BBC on television and I go, oh, must put that in the book.
Yeah.
And many times something would come into my head and I go, oh, I must get that into the book somewhere.
Yes.
And if it was ancient, for example, something from ancient Egypt or Roman times, the handy thing was I could put in a discovery of something. So, for example, the Rosetta Stone, I included when that was found, which was at the end of the 1700s, and then when they actually decrypted it and they began to understand the script on it. That came in the year that happened, which is around 1815 or 1825, I think.
Okay.
So
now there's another thing that's another clever little a part of the design. I think there's 100 pages in this. Is that right?
100 designs.
100 designs. So 100 designs with 500 years of history.
Yes.
So 5 years each page.
That's
basically,
right,
like
and
we
12
were saying.
facts per page.
So that's, again, particularly relevant in this particular year. For us, 100 years means a lot this year. So it is well worth going and finding it where you can get it, which, as I said to you, is also just getting directly onto Alison and popping an email to alison.hackett@21cr.ie. And Hackett has 2 T's at the end. Because she is the visual time traveller.ie. I love it. You were very clever to come up with that title, though. I mean, that didn't just happen unless you were fast asleep and having dreaming or something. So, okay, this is the one.
I have had wakeful nights thinking about things. I love finding a title. I actually, when I was working with the Institute of Physics, I loved coming up with the title for conferences. For example, we did one, Physics Meets Medicine. and
Right.
or another one is Physics Any of Your Business.
Cool.
So I like titles that are playful.
Yeah, so
and
that's very interesting. Now, just going to you now. Let's get on to you rather than the book for a moment. So you yourself had this artistic side then, clearly bursting to get out.
I think that's probably true. Yes,
Yeah.
it was very sublimated for many years. But the opportunity of this, every time I was doing things in physics, I loved the graphic side and the visual side, but also the communication side, because I'm a teacher in the past and I love
Yes.
seeing people switch on and understand something. It's
And
very
is that
exciting
how
to me.
you came into being in teaching in the first place? I mean, did you want to be? What did you want to be when
I
you were leaving
did.
college or in college?
No, I
Was
did.
it?
I studied mathematics and economics,
Right.
but I always knew I liked helping people understand maths, because
Yeah.
I loved maths, and I love the sort of excitement of maths when you understand it, when you see how equations work, or the geometry of something.
Yeah,
and
so
I
you
love
could see
passing that on.
and that's the thing, and that's the
Yeah,
joy, and that's
yeah.
isn't that the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher? It's the communication.
I think
of
so.
the issue.
And I think the students know if you kind of love what you're talking about.
Yes.
And in fact, when I gave a talk before the book was published, a girl who was about to be 10 went home and insisted her parents got her this book as her birthday present. And they had to go off and try and find it. They didn't know what she was talking about. But she
Yeah.
came along to the first talk I gave, asked a question. And I was so happy, really, that I had reached a 10-year-old
Yes.
as much as I can reach an 80-year-old, and an
Oh, yeah,
academic
that's
as much as a
very, very
non-academic. So I like the concept of making knowledge and information very accessible to people.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and clearly you do very well too. Okay, now you're on a mission to get the word out there. You have the exhibition coming up as well. I'm not going to ask you to give details about that right now, because it can change, and hopefully we'll be able to revisit this topic. But all the details of exhibitions, books, or how to buy it,
And the
where you
talk.
can buy it, the
Yeah,
talk, how
yeah.
much it'll be, they're all on your website, thevisualtimetraveller.ie, and that's really the first place to go, or email you at alison.hackett@21cr.ie. I know I'm pushing it a little bit, but I think it's worth it, because it is the only way people can get the book, apart from going to Hodges Figgis. Is that right?
Indeed. Well, I think they can get the book if they come to the talk, or one of
Yes,
the talks,
yes.
or the exhibition.
Oh, well, that's what I meant, yes.
And what's wonderful is that if you have the book in your hands
Yeah.
and you're at the talk, then you suddenly begin to get it.
Oh,
and
for
you can
sure,
start
yeah.
flying back and forth. And in fact, when I was giving the talk back in the Royal College of Physicians last year, as part of Culture Week, it was wonderful because I designed it to be a little bit medical oriented. So I was picking up a lot
Yeah.
of the medical aspects of the book.
Yes.
But during it, I was given the part on which we just opened on that page, the handle and the water music. And a woman, while I was giving the talk, I was saying, I never checked with the designer whether the actual music she put on the Thames was from the water music. And if she's listening now, she'll be cross with me. I think she did say
No,
she
I'm
had
sure
got
she
it,
won't.
but I had never fully
And-
done a proof of that and checked it.
Was that Sarah Maloney, or who was
That
the
was Sarah
actual-
Maloney.
So she
And-
designed the whole book, more or less.
She did an
With her
awful lot of the
colleagues.
illustrations.
Yes.
No, Garrett Bennis was my first point of contact, so I would talk about all the
So
designs
these
with
hand-
him, and he directed. He
Are
was
these
the
handmade
creative director.
illustrations,
Many started with hand
It's
drawings,
astonishing.
which is what I wanted, and then very skillfully they would bring them into a digital format.
I mean,
by bringing-
those pictures of no, says he quickly, Kepler.
that's
and,
Kepler and his mother, because they were
and his
both
mother.
accused of being witches.
Hard to tell who, apart from the beard, it's hard to tell. Which
Well,
is
the
which.
brilliant thing with that design is Sarah, she found a picture of Kepler online, so that will be roughly how Kepler looked on the
Awesome.
left. But there was no picture of his mother. Why would there have been?
So she did it, yeah.
And but she mocked up his mother to look a little bit like him.
And then, who are these gentlemen?
This was the man who. This was in Paris.
1655 we're on,
Yeah,
yeah.
in Paris in
Just a mere few
1655.
years ago.
In 1655, there was a raid on a monastery, and it was during Lent, and the police found that the monks were all there busy drinking wine and eating meat.
Oh,
so
crikey.
they were arrested.
Crikey. Look, it's just fantastic. I just love it, and full credit, and I don't mind saying it again, to Origin Design, because they've clearly done a fantastic job between Gareth Bennis and Sarah Maloney, and other people I'm sure helped out along the way. And then one small thing is you had to go far afield to get it printed, but I guess it is a specialist type of printing, and it was a different era. But
Yes.
I know it was printed in the Netherlands, but clearly you could probably, if you were going again, get it done here now that the
I would hope so. I
first
would
one
hope
is ready.
so. And I would love to be involved in that production process because we had so much on our plates. We needed to outsource that, really,
Yes,
the production
it was
part.
far away, you couldn't have gone.
But they did, the designers, very
I might
wisely.
introduce somebody, as the man said, I know a man. And if he doesn't, he'll know a man.
It being an art book, the Netherlands are producing some of the best art books. And there's so much about the Northern Renaissance in the book too. It was lovely that it was done.
Well, look,
there.
it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in, Alison. And
Thank
as
you,
you can
Don.
see, Alison would be a fantastic teacher. So I'm sorry I didn't have you as a math teacher. I might have got better than a D. But anyway, you've really done great work with this. So if you want to go and find that book, we'll just say it once more. thevisualtimetraveller.ie is the website. Go and look, and you'll see Alison's email there as well. I'm sure you can get in contact. You can contact this show by emailing your business at dublincityfm.ie, and we could be talking about what you do on another day. The podcast of today's show will be up on talkback.ie from, well, I won't say from tomorrow because the site is down at the moment, but in the next few days on talkback.ie. Thank you for your company. News is coming up. I'm Don Harris. Join me again next week at the same time, 12:30, right here on 103.2 Dublin City FM for another edition of You and Your Business.